Good afternoon. Welcome to today's event, Overcoming Technological Challenges of Setting Up a Simulation Facility, presented by Michael Young and Mark Jarvis, and hosted by Education Management Solutions. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lori Kearns, and I will be your moderator today. Also assisting today from EMS is Gwen Willie. For those of you familiar with GoToWebinar, please excuse this brief tutorial. Your GoToWebinar interface includes a control panel on the right. Clicking the orange arrow will open and close the panel. You may listen to the audio portion of the webinar using your computer speakers or by telephone. When selecting Use Telephone, the dial-in information will be displayed. Please note, due to the large number of attendees, it is important to remain in listen-only mode. You may enter your questions to our webinar staff through the Questions pane. Simply type in your question and click Send. We will answer as many questions as we have time for. There are 3 great reasons to fill out the exit survey at the completion of the webinar. It is a chance to provide feedback and also to request a copy of the slides or a link to the webinar recording. Please note that occasionally a pop-up blocker, browser interruption, or security setting may prevent this from being displayed. Stay tuned also to learn how you can join the discussion following the webinar. We have a great topic ahead of us. Please allow me to introduce our guest experts. Mr. Young supports classroom and lab technologies at the Department of Nursing at Tarleton State University. A major part of his duties includes working directly with the simulation technology, including server management, scenario programming, and as primary technology support for the high-fidelity simulators. Working with faculty and lab assistants in the preparation and operation of the simulators, Mr. Young plays an active decision-making role in the selection of simulation technology for the 53,000 square foot 3-story building, which opened its doors in January of 2011. Gwen, I think we might have an open mic there. If you would check that for me, I'd appreciate that. In addition to his work with the Center for Instructional Innovation and the Department of Nursing, Michael serves on the SSIH Technology and Standards Committee and has worked with committee members to promote a technical track for educators and technical staff who work with simulation technology as the primary technical support resource for their simulation lab or center. Mark Jarvis is an electrical engineer with more than 25 years of broad-based experience in systems integration for electro-optical and electromechanical systems, color image processing, digital video, computer control systems, and project management. Mark holds 2 patents, one for video camera system to perform accurate color and appearance measurements, the second for a video-based immersive theater design. Mark designed and oversaw the successful installation of numerous multi-million-dollar planetaria and immersive theaters in the UK, Mexico, Alexandria, Egypt, and China. Mark joined Education Management Solutions in 2006 and is currently Manager of Engineering, designing and delivering medical simulation and training systems for more than 100 medical and nursing programs nationally and internationally. Mark received his MSc in Electrical Engineering from Union College and his BEE from the University of Delaware. Mark is Infocom Certified Tech Specialist and is a member of IEEE Institute of Electronic Engineers. Now, before I hand over the microphone, Mark and Mike have requested that I ask for your response. I would like to put up a poll here so that you can tell us just a little bit about your primary responsibilities. And there we are. I have opened a poll for you. If you would take just a moment and register your response, we'd like you to describe your primary responsibilities within the simulation team. And I see the results are coming in. And Mike and Mark, I'll let you know that of our attendance today of about 165, we have 34% indicating that they are a director, 44% indicating they're clinical educator, and about 40% indicating that they are a technologist. Let me go ahead and close that poll and share that information. And I will also bring up your slides for you, Michael, and take it away.
Good afternoon. I am I cannot share my slide.
I will one more time. Oops.
Hold on, folks. It'll just be a moment.
Just a moment. I'll take back that for just a moment, and then I will again make you the presenter, Mike. All right, there you are.
Okay. Here I am.
You should have control.
It is still blocking my slide.
All right, let's do this. I will bring up your slides on my machine, and I will advance them for you. How's that?
That will work wonderfully. Apologize to our audience. We'll have this going here in a moment.
Okay. Are you able to see your slides now, Mike?
I don't see them yet.
No,
don't see
there's
them yet?
nothing there.
There we go.
Yeah, I see it.
All right.
All right. The big question that is often asked of me is, where do we get started? How do we get the ball rolling, and how do we know we're doing the right thing? The one thing about technology that is true is that technology has become increasingly more sophisticated and complicated, more sophisticated and easier to use at the same time. From the user perspective, computer systems are easier to operate than they were 20 years ago. And here's a screenshot of word processor on a computer platform that I actually used about 20 years ago. And it's quite a lot more complicated in how you can format a document with this particular word processor. All right, let's go to the next slide. At the same time, from the perspective of the technologists, systems have become very complex, and typically no one person can specialize in everything. Go ahead and move forward. And there's a diagram of a typical institutional layout of the infrastructure, very complex, but this enables the end user to actually have a simpler interface to use. All right, slide 4.
So the key, the key here is to not have the technology be the driver. The ultimate goal is to teach and not to just have technology for technology's sake. Michael provided a nice diagram there that that's what can happen if you do things just for the sake of doing it. Next slide.
We need to kind of get some perspective. A lot of times the end user is excited about the kind of technology they want to employ, and they rarely slow down enough to know even if they should be using that technology. So before looking at specific technologies, whether it's a specific simulator or specific AV system, you need to take pause and consult with your operational staff, your educators. If you're an administrator, those who work for you, your colleagues, and especially talk with your technical staff and involve them early on in the process and discuss what the objectives should be for your project, whether it's a full building or if you're just refurbishing your existing space or upgrading a particular component. And go ahead and advance one more. Can the objective only be addressed by technology? Oftentimes, the quick answer is let's get some technology here. But if you can address that using a policy or procedures or something like that and it do just as well, why complicate things and add the expense? Secondly, create a comprehensive list of what the institution hopes to accomplish with the facility that they're building.
And this is really important because different facilities have different means and methods for doing things. So that then feeds into how you might place cameras and viewing angles depending upon what types of teaching methods might be used. Some places use a more traditional method where they always approach a patient from the right, and other institutes teach in more of a free form, where they leave it up to the student to decide how they're going to do that. So it's important to get that perspective and ask those questions.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, you need to think about, listen, get your feedback, and then as you learn more, be willing to amend your objectives based on what you learned from that dialogue. And you also need to begin to organize the objectives that you're trying to meet into some sort of hierarchy or relationship. You can use whatever method of diagramming or listing that helps you, but begin to define what the relationships are between objectives and the technologies, and the relationship between technologies to each other. Okay, advance the slide, please. Here's another example. We won't spend any time here for time's sake, but you can review this later when you have a copy. Please advance. Once it's determined what the best solution should be for meeting objectives, there are other considerations. A lot of times we only look at the things we can see at the endpoints without really thinking about what connects those endpoints together. And so we've got some examples on the screen of how you hook up air to the mannequin, communication cable. Some devices use networks, HDMI cable between a computer and a projector perhaps, or an LCD screen. And you have to ask yourself what it has to be in the walls for everything to work. There's so much that cannot be seen. Okay, one more. Mark, can you add to that?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily just wires, but a lot of the newer simulators are wireless also, so you need to take that into consideration as to will it interfere with existing wireless infrastructure, and so that's a point where you need to then get your IT departments involved.
All right, thank you, Mark. Please advance. Once you have the objectives defined, I think you have a framework that you can begin with further planning. Mark?
Yeah, so you want to, excuse me, so you want to talk to all the participating parties and make sure that talk to the people that are going to be using it and find out how they're going to use it. What types of things do they want to capture, so that you can determine how many cameras and where to place those cameras. And also don't forget about audio. That's one of the most important parts, is to capture the conversation between the participants, and so that plays a very key role, and sometimes can get forgotten in its importance. Also, do you need to capture a high definition video, or is standard definition okay? Do you want a standard video signal, or do you want network-based IP cameras? So those are different things that that you need to look at.
Okay, go ahead and advance.
Also, then what types of simulators will you be using? So the different, there are three major suppliers for full body mannequins: Laerdal, Medi, Gomard, and each one has features that are different, and they have different advantages over others, and they also have different methods for collecting data, and it's important to understand that so that you can develop a plan of how you want to capture that data. What data do you want to capture? They also have a vital sign monitor that usually comes with the mannequin, and you want to capture that and then have that integrated with whatever video it is, video cameras that you're capturing, so that you can play them back together. Will you have multiple locations? How many simulations do you need to run simultaneously? Because that can go into then how many control stations do you need? Because the number of beds you may have may be more than how many that you can run, depending upon how large a staff will you have. So these are all considerations that you need to take into account.
Okay, please advance. And do you want flexibility with the, are you going to want to be able to use more than one type of simulator in a space? And it's important to plan for that, because you could lock yourself in with if you don't have the right products in place for that kind of connectivity. You also need to ask each vendor about the platform their system is based on. Can you comment on that, Mark?
Yeah, yes. The different, as I said earlier, the different manufacturers have different means for storing the data. And I'm sorry, had a whether it's a local network, what operating systems are they operating? Is it a Windows-based platform, or is it a Mac-based platform? How will it, and the types of simulators that you choose will determine the interoperability of those different network interfaces. And then, do you want to do it as a software as a service? There are, if you don't want to have the infrastructure local, there is, you can do a cloud-based system. So there are many different ways of doing this.
And that kind of segues nicely into talking about the licensing limitations of the various different companies that provide your services or hardware. Some systems tie the licensing to the software to the hardware that it resides on, and the risk of doing that is if, for example, if the software is residing on a laptop that you've purchased, if that laptop dies for whatever reason, you can't just necessarily replace the laptop. Some vendors require that you buy a new laptop and software at the same time from that vendor, and really that just adds to the cost all the more. So when you're making those decisions, you need to keep that in mind. Also consider the maintenance costs, not just during the warranty period of the first year, but maybe as late as 5 years later. Think about how what will happen if something stops working. And some vendors actually provide extended maintenance services. some are better at it than others, and so you need to ask these kinds of questions when you're making decisions about the products you use. Okay, please advance. You need to compare the features, the platforms, look at the company profiles of each vendor that's being considered, and observe carefully who was the most concerned about meeting your objectives. Mark?
Sorry, I'm having some technical problems here.
All right.
So, Michael, if you can keep going, and I will get this
Sure.
back up.
Chime in when you're ready. One of the things you want to do is, did the representative point out any trade-offs between the features they offer and the cost? You know, to meet your objectives, you may not need the fanciest and the best part of what they offer. They may have lower cost options that will meet your objectives nicely and reduce cost and overhead. You need to keep a log of what you like and dislike about each product, and it's probably a good idea to keep those separate. You know, each log into a different file or whatever, however you want to organize that information, so that you can reference that later when you're meeting in a committee. Keep all correspondence. Follow up each phone conversation with an email that summarizes the points discussed, and ask your contact person, the person that you were talking to on the phone, to verify receipt and that it reflects the actual discussion conclusions. This allows you to make sure that you're all on the same page and that you have a ring log of what was actually agreed upon, and makes it easier later to refer back to what was discussed before. Okay, please advance. And now, very critical is to understand the technical part of things. You got to realize where your own limitations are, and to actually seek advice from technical people who have specialties in various areas. Set up a simulation technology advisory committee that is made up of key personnel in various domains. Mark?
Yeah, and so those people would be your simulation educators, the faculty, the ones that are, and the administrators. Also, simulation operations, the people that are actually going to be running the center, and then the simulation technologists. If you can advance a couple of them. Okay. And then also very key is to get the information technology group involved, and so that they have a sense of ownership and a stake in what's going on, because the systems are going to be they're going to tie into the network. They're going to be relatively complex, and so you want their participation from the beginning, and then also your instructional technology specialists, your help desk, So, Michael, if you want.
Yeah, and just as a point, if you're an academic institution, quite often there are two different divisions of IT. Mark mentioned information technology. It could be categorized under different titles or names for these departments, but the other one is instructional technology, and sometimes these are called the Centers for Instructional Technology. On our own campus, it's called the Center for Instructional Innovation. And both organizations have their own funding, their own domains of influence and support. So you want to get both of these divisions, and if you have others, certainly want to include them as well. Go ahead and advance. In setting up Simulation Technology Advisory Committee, you also want to consider not just the technical people, but the people who are going to be responsible for managing and maintaining the facilities that are being built. Especially on an academic campus, you'll have a physical facilities plant, and there's all kinds of specialists, professionals in various areas such as HVAC, which is heating and air conditioning, electrical, plumbing. And in the case of simulation, quite often there's a centralized compressor and vacuum system that provides services to your head walls. Please advance. You know, whether this is a refurbished building or a new one, you also want to make sure that the architecture people are involved, and as soon as the construction group is starting the project, you want to keep them involved in the loop while you're making these kinds of decisions. All of it will affect the workflow of the entire project. And so chances are your architects and construction people are already going to be insisting on some sort of process. Okay, advance. A committee should, you know, we need to be able to set up some sort of technology advisory committee, especially as it relates to simulation technology, and realize that there are key personnel in various domains that you're going to want to put on that committee. And you want to make sure that there's not more than 2 people from each domain, and each domain being those things we've talked about in the previous slides. So everybody has their own expertise. Okay, advance.
You want to keep the committee right-sized. You want to make sure that it doesn't grow too large, because we've all probably had experience before. If you get too many people involved, then things can bog down much more quickly. So you need to make sure that you select the right group, that you get from those groups that Michael listed previously.
Okay, advance. And make sure that the committee recognizes their role in the process, that they shouldn't dictate what products are purchased, but simply provide insight into the challenges, and if the challenges can be addressed within budget and staffing constraints. Advance. The committee is just advising the decision makers. Now, there may be other aspects to consider that are really out of the control of the committee, but it's their job to advise the decision makers on what those limitations or expectations are. Advance.
So, key things to plan for is space allocation for the different systems that you might install. The storage system for the recordings, all of the electronics that go along with the AV system that you're installing, and the computer servers, compressors, the tanks, you know, the air gas tanks. Next, please. The HVAC, the sizing of that, how many power circuits are needed, and the sizing for that, you know, as to how many circuits and what size circuits you need. Next, okay, and then the power and network connection requirements in the simulation areas and in the control rooms that you'll be running the simulations from. All these things need to be you know, figured out ahead of time. Ceiling height, that is important for depending upon the size of the room. If the ceilings are very tall, then you wind up just capturing the tops of people's heads and maybe not the you know, what you're intending. So you know, if the ceiling height is too high, then you might look at putting the cameras on the walls instead of on the ceiling. What the construction of those are. Is it going to be a drop ceiling? Is it going to be sheetrock? And do you have to take seismic considerations? And, you know, are you in an earthquake zone? So these are all things that need to be looked at. Sound insulation, you know, you don't want noise from one room bleeding into the next. So you want to consider that. Your wall finishes, and even the color of the wall plates that you're going to be putting in. Those are all things that are good to figure out before you get going. And also, are you someplace where you have to you know, be concerned, you know, about union labor and the union labor rates? So that comes into the cost of the project. Next, please. So the next thing is that we want to be worried about is the how will your people that are going to be using the system, how will they log into the system? Will you use Active Directory, which is a Microsoft-based login system, or LDAP, or a single sign-on server? And that's set typically by the network policies of your facility. If you can advance a couple, thank you. That's another reason why it's very important to bring your networking, your IT people into the process early in the process. Michael?
Yeah, and if you're building like a simulation center, or you're in a hospital and you're also servicing other organizations, other institutions outside of your own, are they going to have users that already have user credentials to log in? You're going to have to figure out how to give them access. Or they have access to the network inside your building, or they're going to have to use VPN or some other method for logging in. And so you have to keep all of these issues in mind when you're making these plans. Mark?
Yeah, and also will the people that are coming and using the facility, will they assume multiple roles? Will one day they'll be an instructor, and the next day they may be a learner? And you need to make sure that that the system is capable of being able to make those types of changes, and so that you can keep the maximum flexibility in the system.
Okay, advance. And here's just a really quick splash, because we do really need to kind of move forward. Got to determine what's really important to you as the end user. And for me in our center here, customer support is a big factor, and I think that's true for anybody. Okay, advance. This is pretty critical. You really need to strongly consider getting outside expertise and not just rely upon your own specialists. It gives you a different perspective of things, and you want somebody that will provide you some expertise that maybe you hadn't really considered. Advance.
And also, you want to make sure that that you get someone that will ask probing questions and challenge and verify what your objectives for the center are, because that will ensure that you have the best facility to meet your needs.
Okay, advance. And this is just for reference later. You can look at this, but it describes what's a good profile for a technology consultant for simulation. Okay, please advance. You need to establish some initial support strategies and provide an environment that encourages local IT buy-in. Mark, can you comment on that?
And a great way to do that is to send your networking and IT people to a simulation conference so that they can see how the systems are used and how they can interact and can talk to different groups about how they use it.
Yeah, and one thing is you really want them to see other educators utilizing this so they can see what the role of simulation is in the education process. You can also invite IT management and technicians to view other simulation centers, whether it's yours or some of your colleagues on other campuses. Next. And it helps them to understand the scope of the issues involved. Next. Schedule a time to meet, for them to meet the IT departments at these other institutions so they can see how they're interfacing with the simulation technology that you're wanting to use. And it gives them time to talk to their language. It also provides an opportunity for you to entice IT with high-tech, the high-tech uniqueness of patient simulation. And think once IT sees some of the things that they can do, they'll want to be a part of it. Next.
And you want that to, so that you want to develop a close relationship with your IT staff, because they're going to be able to help you, and especially, as we said before, if they have that buy-in, if they have that vested interest from the beginning, then it will be more successful for you and for them.
Yeah, nothing is more frustrating for IT than to be asked to support something that they don't have any training or didn't even have input on when it was put in. And in some cases, they may not even have the administrative access they need to implement any change that you need. Advance. Again, this for your reference. You need to think about obsolescence, what's happening when that laptop dies. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but here's some other ideas about that for you to refer to later. Next. Here's some ideas for bringing money back into your center so that you can support obsolescence and replacement and costs. Next. How to reduce confusion. Again, you can refer to that later. Next. Now it's your turn. I'll hand this back over to Lori.
Certainly. Thank you, Michael. We have had some questions coming in. Alex is asking a question very specific to instructor and monitor laptops with regard to simulators. He's saying, what policies have you seen work to ensure network security? Oftentimes those manufacturers state no updates or don't make any changes, but have you ensured any network security or protection in the light of these requirements?
Yeah, Mark, I'd like to address this.
Sure.
I think that yeah, a lot of times your vendors are going to come and say, well, if you install this the simulation control software on anything but the computer we provided you, we're not going to support that. Now, that's directly related to your question. But in our own place, we made the decision to use standard workstations in the control room, which gives us actually a lot more control over logins, security, even antivirus and stuff. And some of these simulation vendors, they say don't use antivirus, but your campus policy may say otherwise, that you must have it on there. Because typically these vendors don't want to mess with troubleshooting restrictions that they have no control over. And so consequently we went ahead and installed the software on our workstations, which are joined to our network infrastructure's domain. So all security is being managed from the top down, from servers being managed by IT, which also means that we need to have that relationship with IT, because sometimes we have to open up a port on the network to make the software work right. And but that's where the symbiotic relationship comes in. They need to understand what your needs are, and in some cases they'll be happy to help a lot. In other cases, they may actually save you from a lot of heartache when something doesn't work right. And so I hope that helps. Is there anything you think we need to add to that, Mark?
No, I think that, I mean, from my perspective, I've seen a lot of different institutions, and I've seen that work, and it has worked very successfully. The model that you've used, Michael. Different institutes have policies where they have they set up perimeter security, and they don't worry about inside their network as much. So yes, it is a difficult question what Alex asked, and it can be successful by loading those things on there, but you will get pushback from the simulation vendors, because it is out of their control, and so they will be very hesitant to support that, just as Michael stated.
Yeah.
All right.
And all the more important to have somebody on site that is IT that can help you resolve those issues and stay within the campus or institutional guidelines.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Thank you. We have a question from Connie, and Connie asks, what considerations need to be made regarding wall finish and wall plate color?
Well, if you're trying to emulate a hospital room, a lot of times they won't, typically they'll have like a stainless steel finish, or head walls. Do you want head walls with to simulate the in an OR or in a patient room? So those types of finishes are what I was referring to there.
All right, thank you. Mark, we also have a question from Vicki, and this is for either one of you. Are you able to provide any specific recommendations for audio? She's really asking specifically about units for wireless voice of patient setup. I don't know. I know you both have experience with that, but I don't know if you have any recommendations you'd like to share.
Mark, I think that'd be really better for you.
For wireless, now typically we will set up a system where it permits you to from one microphone to be able to be the voice of the mannequin, or from an overhead speaker. Now we typically install a wired system for that, not a wireless system. But it's important in your audio system to have to include digital signal processing to clean up. There's a lot of things that you can do with electronics to help to minimize the noises that occur from air conditioning systems and from other vibrations and things that occur in a building, and there are electronic means to reduce those types of inputs. So that's another thing that's important to make sure that you have in your audio system to ensure the highest quality audio.
All right, thank you. Mary has a question. How soon in the process should technology planning committee be formed?
I think that as we pointed out in the slides, the short answer is as soon as possible. But really, before you start taking up people's time and trying to figure out who needs to be on that committee, you really need to define the objectives that you're trying to meet with the new facilities or the changes being made to your facility. And really get those nailed down well, because this has to do with what you're trying to accomplish with the project itself. And I think this will give really the right agenda for your committee to begin to consider.
All right, thank you. Again, a more specific question. If either one of you have experience with voice converters, there's a question specific to using voice converters with your mannequins.
Well,
go ahead, Michael.
My experience, I've kind of had mixed results. I've only actually been able to test a software solution. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that unless you have a lot of processing power, but it tends to create some additional support issues. But there are some hardware solutions that don't require so many computer resources itself, but give you some of the options that you need. And I think Mark probably has some experience with that.
It is a difficult thing to you can get it set for one person, but the settings will be different for the next person that comes in. So it is something that requires typically a lot of adjusting, and somebody who is not afraid of technology, because it is not a simple thing to do, and there's a lot of complex math involved, and yes, there's good electronics and good software programs to do it, but it's something that takes a lot of adjustments to get it right and not have it sound mechanical. So.
All right,
And
thank you.
One of the strategies that I've used is we actually pre-record all of our audio, and it takes a lot of work to do that, but it's, typically our clinicians and our educators, they know what kind of conversations are going to take place, and so as much of that as we can, we record in the right gender voice and to reflect age as well. Go ahead.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Peter has a great question. He asks, have you had experience in making a simulation facility run an operating room scenario? If so, what challenges have you faced?
Well, we don't have a need in our nursing school to actually do that, except in the case if we were to bring in some interprofessional type of scenarios. So I really can't speak specifically to operating room. That would also require some different kinds of simulators. But as I said, it would also need to be interprofessional. You'll need your surgeon, you'll need your anesthesiologist in there. So you need to have a room that is obviously large enough to accommodate the additional equipment and the additional personnel. Have you seen any of this, Mark?
Yeah, those rooms are typically some of the most complex. There's usually boom structures in the ceiling, so that then can limit where you can place cameras and where you can place microphones. But all of that can be resolved with proper planning. Now, I can't speak at all to how the scenarios run, but I think the real key there is getting that team dynamic. How are the different disciplines interacting with each other, and then getting them together afterwards for debriefing so that you can show them where things went well and where things maybe could improve. Yeah, we've set up a number of ORs, but I'm not there to when they're actually operating, and so I can't really speak to the scenario, how the scenarios run.
We have many questions coming in and just a few minutes left before the top of the hour, so we'll get to as many as we can. As a reminder, I will state that you will have an opportunity to request a copy of the recording and also the slides at the close of the webinar. Mark has a great question, and he's asking, do you have any advice on managing scheduling? Do you recommend any programs? How do you handle needing reports for things like utilization?
Well, there are a number of third-party systems that incorporate scheduling and video systems as well as communication, scheduling spaces as well as scheduling people, and a number of vendors that provide these kinds of services. And be glad to talk with anybody offline about some options that are available. But certainly these are the questions that when you start contacting your vendors, find out, do they offer a comprehensive plan, not just for what you need right now, but what you might need here in the next year or two, up to 5 years. Because whatever you start with, you're going to want to be able to build on it rather than replace it when you need something more.
Thank you. Vicky's asking, can you recommend how many camera views work well? Also a follow-up question, she's asking about AV capture for the operator versus a one-way mirror for the control room operator.
I'd like to address the one-way mirror question. And you know, you see this a lot in simulation centers, and in my own personal opinion, you can have a different opinion and you'll be completely fine, but the amount of money that it costs to put in such a one-way type of glass, surprisingly the cost of it is comparable or more than what it would cost to put in some sort of viewing device, monitor with camera, so you can see what's going on in that space. And then of course you can reduce the problems created by one-way mirrors, where if you need more light in the control room, you know, you can actually reveal the person behind the curtain, so to speak, and kind of remove that sense of immersion in the simulation space. Mark, can you address that as well?
Yeah, I think your point there about especially with the lighting, you know, that if you do raise the light level in the control room, then it is easier then to see that there is you know, the person behind the curtain there, and you know, you definitely want to have that live camera feeds there from your different cameras, so that you can see, you know, what you're recording. And a lot of times that you want to use a camera that has a pan, tilt, and zoom capability, so that you can change the angle, change the zoom of the camera, so that you can capture different details. And so, you know, you absolutely then have to have that perspective for you know, to make sure that you're capturing the right thing. You know, if you're looking through the glass, you know, a lot of times when you're running a scenario too, it's you've got a lot going on if you're managing the simulator and everything else. So having, you know, looking through the glass and everything can be beneficial, but it also can be a distraction then from actually operating the simulator.
Now, also speaking to the number of cameras, of course, this will also be impacted by you know, just exactly what's in that room. Mark mentioned the scenario of having a lot of equipment in the room. For us, you know, I made a conscious decision to use fixed cameras, 3 cameras in all, and we adjusted those so that each camera has a view of the entire room. But you know, that kind of backfired a little bit on us, because there's been times we wish we could just zoom in or change the focus of at least one of the cameras. And so if I were to go back and redo it, and eventually we will, we'll probably swap out one of the fixed cameras for a pan tilt zoom camera, just to give us that flexibility. One of the reasons we avoided pan tilt zoom in most of the spaces, we do use them in some places, is, as Mark also pointed out, there's a lot of stuff happening, and in the control room as well. And so if you're constantly having to adjust a single camera, panning from one side of the room to the other, you may actually miss things that are going on in that room that you would like to debrief on, and simply because you're focusing on another area. And so you really do need, even with pan tilt zoom, to have at least have more than one angle available to you. But you don't necessarily need pan tilt zoom on all 3 angles or more. And I hope that helps you.
And I think in a typical simulation room, 3 cameras does seem to work best, as far, you know, and considering budget also, because you know, obviously the more cameras you put in, the higher the cost. So you know, you also have to be cognizant of that.
Michael, this question might be best posed to you. Jim is asking, how many AV technologists would you recommend to support a facility? And while you answer that, I'm going to change our view just a bit so that I can bring up the address for our audience members so that they can learn how they can continue the conversation following the webinar.
All right. One thing I would suggest is you'd have to really decide what an AV technologist is. You know, there's a lot of merging of these two mediums between IT and AV, but there are some unique things about both technologies that that you need to understand. And really the number of AV technologists that you would need would really correlate to exactly you know, how big your facility is, how many cameras you have, how many servers you have doing that. Do you have more than one site that you are trying to manage? It's hard for a single AV technologist to manage one site, and if he has to be somewhere else as well. And you know, hopefully, you know, they're not needed on a day-to-day basis, that everything is working fine. So depending on the system you use, its stability, the flexibility that it has, could actually reduce how much time that specialist spends. And so one may do the job, and even on multiple sites. It just depends on the types of issues you're having to deal with daily. In some centers, they actually basically reconfigure depending on the scenario, where they might use different wireless microphones on different people, different quantities, and stuff like that, and it sometimes requires additional setup. And so unless you want to have everybody be AV specialists, it's good to keep somebody on hand who understands what exactly is going on and the implications of it. But typically speaking, if you have a good simulation technologist, and I'm not speaking in the general term where we're talking about an operator and clinician that is responsible for setting up, but somebody who is really understands the entire infrastructure, AV should be a part of their skill set. They don't have to necessarily be specialists in it, but they should know enough about it to know where to go to get the answers.
Great point. Well, Michael and Mark, it's getting to be the top of the hour. I very much appreciate your time. We've had a wealth of great questions by our audience members, many more questions than we have had time to address. The two of you bring just a huge volume of experience and technical knowledge to the table, so I do appreciate your willingness to share this very important information with us. I also want to invite you, our audience member, to continue the conversation. Please do add your comments and questions to our blog. There's two ways to access that. One is to go directly to the EMS Works website and select the blog tool from the top menu, or go directly using this link to the emsworks.com medical simulation blog. And I do encourage you to, as I said, submit your questions and comments. Mr. Young and Mr. Jarvis will be adding additional comments. They'll be happy to respond to you. And Mike and Mark, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close for the day?
No, I appreciate the time you spent with us today, and certainly feel free to participate in the blog. And we know this is a vast subject, and there's a lot of concerns, and technology is something that people are a little nervous about. And it's really not as scary as it sounds.
That's a great point. I appreciate that.
And I just want to thank everyone for coming and listening in, and we'll be happy to answer questions offline.
Great. Well, thank you again so much. It's the top of the hour. We'll close for today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.